your martial arts movie podcast.
Haha! I threw that shit before I walked in the room!
Featuring drunken Thai boxer Will.
Too bad you will die.
The also drunken wrestler Mark.
I said I don't want trouble!
And drunken karate master Zero.
You've lost your balls.
And now,
I know Kung Fu. You know, baby.
Fists of Fail.
Happy New Year's, everybody!
Hey, Happy New Year. It's
Yeah.
2023. That's such an ugly number as well.
Yeah. As is my age as we continue doing these episodes, and as I watch my my waistline go. Anyways, we're starting off the new year with a bang. If you guys see the title of today's episode, you know we're covering a pretty iconic film. Let's just put it like that. But I guess we should, before we even get into that, we should say that this year we're doing a little bit of an experiment. We are moving a little bit away from themes for now. We're going to make some exceptions every once in a while. But for the most part, this year we're going to be covering all the movies that are available on yeahhhh. This is, I mean, if you guys don't already know, because you guys are listening to a kung fu / martial arts movie podcast, yeahhhh would be the place to go, supposedly, where you can watch all the martial arts movies.
And yeah,
supposedly.
we should note, this is in no way sponsored at all by yeahhhh. We are subscribed to it. We want to just see, like, okay, there is a streaming service out there geared towards martial arts movies, Asian cinema. Specifically, can we survive on their content? We put out a podcast once a week, sometimes more, with the Quick Jab episodes, if you're subscribed to our Patreon. So, yeah, will this be enough for us?
Will this be enough? And will we be giving up in June? I mean, we're definitely going to cover some stinkers every once in a while, too, or maybe not so great films. But we wanted to start off the year with a movie that I'm sure all of you know about. And if you haven't, turn off this episode and go watch it. I mean, after we get to the Patreon break. But anyways, we're covering Flashpoint. When was the last time we talked about Donnie Yen? It's been a while.
It's been a while. Oh boy, I don't remember the last time we spoke about Donnie. But we've covered him a bunch in the Line of Duty 4. We've covered all the Ip Man films and anything else? I can't recall.
SPL wasn't the last one, was it? It might have been.
Oh, it might have been SPL. Yeah, that might have been the last time we covered him.
Yeah. So, so Flashpoint, I mean, on the topic of SPL, I think this movie originally pitched as a sequel / more like a prequel to SPL, although I think they weren't able to get the rights to the SPL, brand, I guess. So it's you can call this kind of like a spiritual
spiritual successor or something.
Successor?
Like that?
What's the opposite of successor? Predecessor? I don't know. I don't know English.
Predecessor. There you go.
Predecessor. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, watching the film, it could easily be take place in the universe that SPL set up, because his character in SPL and his character here are very similar. Yeah, they're both cops. They're both
cops.
They're both cops. I mean, Donnie plays cops basically in every movie where he's not a Wing Chun teacher.
You mean he wasn't a Wing Chun cop in Ip Man?
Yeah. Man, Ip Man 4, Ip Man 5, he comes back to life, and he's like,
spoilers, Will, come on.
So Flashpoint, it has a reputation for being one of the better MMA movies, right? Can you call this an MMA movie?
No. So, to clarify, this is not an MMA movie. It has MMA style fighting in it.
Sure. Mm-hmm,
and it's probably... Is it the first one, at least to come out of Hong Kong? Because there's been dabblings of, meldings of different styles in other movies. You know, it's not just all kung fu and Eastern martial arts. But I guess in terms of strictly MMA, what was happening in America and Europe, I'm guessing this may be the first one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Reach out to us. Let us know that we're wrong.
There's probably like an indie film that was released. It's like, oh, he threw an armbar. That's the only MMA
Right.
in the entire film. Yeah, I mean, God, obviously I watched this movie several times. I think the first time I ever watched it was like right out of college, and I was like, wow, how did I not watch this earlier? Because the film was, the film is very enjoyable for my in my eyes, but like looking back on it, and especially watching it before this episode, I realized that like there's actually not a ton of action in the film. You know, it's actually very backloaded.
Very
although they kind of throw it all in there at the end. So
Yes,
this might be an interesting episode to talk about once we actually start breaking it down. But Zero, like, what are your thoughts like watching it again?
I haven't seen this since the first time I watched it, which was all the many, many years ago when it finally came to the U.S. I'm guessing like 2008, probably a year later. I remember thinking nothing of the movie minus the last fight scene because, man, like this movie, this story is so forgettable. It's so bland. It's I'm gonna have some interesting sentiments about it, but I don't think this fight should be in this movie because this is not there's nothing interesting about these characters. They're just pieces moving along a chessboard until finally, you know, the king and queen get together and they beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Like the whole time I was watching this, I kept on thinking, I feel like I'm in episode, I don't know, like 9. Like, because it feels like there's so much backstory that happened before this movie. And when we get into it, that's where we are in the TV series. We've established everything, so we're now towards the final couple episodes where it just wraps up, and that's the end of the movie. So I feel like, you know, they don't need to reestablish the characters. They don't need to do any sort of characterization anymore because, like, oh, we already did that in episode 1 through 6. Now let's just go on to the final, you know, going down the checklist of, okay, we need to make sure we do all these things. And we need to set it up so that we get this big explosive ending. And that's what happens in this movie. But I don't care about any of these characters. These are all poorly written characters. I couldn't tell you a personality trait for almost any of them besides Donnie Yen, who is reckless cop. He is the definition of like police brutality. That's what the movie is telling us and showing us.
Yeah, well, that's, again, going back to what I was saying about SPL. He's the similar character, but in SPL, it showed him having, like, turning a new leaf. He was an unruly cop at first, and then once he moves into whatever new precinct, I guess, whatever, new force, he's kind of, like, turned over a new leaf. And I thought, like, this might be, like, a good origin story for the character. And,
yeah,
well, I mean,
it could have been a prequel, I guess.
It could have worked. Yeah. So again, spiritual predecessor. Actually, I didn't mind the characters so much, but not because the movie, like that. I didn't think that the characters were weak, but I didn't care so much about the characterization rather than just all the story beats. I thought the story beats were relatively interesting. Well, okay. Should I talk about the story?
Yes. Let's get into
I'll do it.
What's the story about? Will?
All right, so let's start off with like mentioning Colin Cho's character because it kind of like sets up everything. So Colin Cho and his two brothers, they are
Vietnamese?
basically the Vietnamese triads. Yeah, Vietnamese triads, and obviously they're doing a thing. They have a mole that are living within their ranks, played by Louis Koo. It's revealed really early on in the film, by the way, so that's not a spoiler. Louis Koo is a mole trying to just get intel inside their ranks, and yeah, that's actually basically the gist of it. And Donnie Yen obviously is a cop, and he's trying to protect his partner, who's Louis Koo, who's putting his line at risk. And as the movie unfolds, eventually it comes to a head where the villains, I guess, they get, let's just say they get in trouble with the law, and then like everyone seems like they're at stake. That everyone's is in peril, including Louis Koo, including Donnie Yen, anyone that's involved with that. That's basically the story without spoiling the film, though. Like I can't really mention anymore.
Spoilers in this movie? I feel like not really. I mean, some people die, but there's no surprise, I guess, in my opinion.
Sure. No, that's true. I mean, when I break it down like that, yeah, it sounds super simple and not that there's not a lot of twists and turns. But I thought the movie does it pretty okay.
I would disagree with you there a lot. Man, like I haven't seen this movie since it first came out, and I remember rewatching this. I remember why I had no interest in rewatching the movie, just rewatching the fight every now and then, is because like I just didn't understand where the story was going. And I realized like, I didn't care once I figured it out either.
Like, I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, like they're trying to make it so that Louis, as you mentioned, Louis Koo, he's the mole. I guess I didn't realize for the longest time he's Donnie Yen's partner. And they're trying to show that they're kind of at odds with each other. There is like a rift in their relationship once Louis Koo it gets revealed that he's a mole, so he is in danger of potentially being hurt or killed by the triads after that, by Colin Cho and his men. So Louis Koo is just all kind of mad at him, and Donnie Yen doesn't want to apologize, so he buys him a leather chair. It's like what? That's how you're showing us these characters are like trying to I don't know, like work things out. I don't know, man. Like
it kind of works. I mean, not really. I mean, well, we can't spoil it too much, but like because of the events that happened around Louis Koo, it's Donnie's character's subtle, not so subtle way of making amends or paying him back. I know. It's not the best way of showing, but yeah, it's to kind of humanize the characters, I guess.
Yes. No, I understand. They do things to try and characterize them. I don't think they are good ways to do it. We've seen better. So that's kind of why as I was rewatching this, I realized, oh yeah, that's why I never really watched this movie, because it's not interesting.
Sure. I agree with you there. So I don't agree in the sense that like I did find the movie kind of engaging, like watching it again. I haven't seen it in a couple of years, obviously, but I always had in the back of my mind thinking like, yeah, but the real reason to watch this is for the fight scenes. I mean, it really is. Like, you can totally skip to the fight scenes.
Exactly. I mean, you can say that about any martial arts movie, right? But we say this a lot, or I say this a lot. Look, if you have a good villain and you want him to go down, it really drives me to root for the hero in the end. And Donnie Yen's action direction is so good that I want this fight in a better movie.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's like it deserves better because it's so good. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, I want good fights in good movies, not good fights in just kind of forgettable, action schlock or something like that.
Yeah, I kind of want to argue, I mean, in your favor, that Louis Koo is kind of the main character for the most part, right? It's really all about his story, and then Donnie Yen's kind of just tagging along,
and then he pretty much takes over at the end.
Yeah, because it's an action movie, so he needs to be there. Like, primarily it's a Louis Koo film until the very end, and that's one folly of the movie. If it was just solely Donnie Yen and his partner was like the story was focused on Donnie Yen, and Louis Koo was like the supporting character, and it wasn't everything wasn't revolving around Louis Koo, I think that'd be fine. But there are some I don't want to call it twists. There are some complications that arise because there is a mob boss who is implicated, and they're doing, all the henchmen are doing dirty deeds in order to get the mob boss off scot-free, and it snowballs into a series of events that propels the characters or compels the characters to do shady things that leads to the end of the movie. So it's like, that's cool and all, but you're right. Like, if it was just, I didn't fully believe that Donnie Yen would just make this sudden shift at the end of the movie. He just says like, fuck honor, fuck being a good cop, I'm just gonna go AWOL.
Well, that's
right?
the thing,
at the end
though.
Of the film.
He was always kind of a grimy cop, never following the rules, and actually being reprimanded in the beginning of the movie for being too brutal with his practices. So there was no change in character for him.
Oh, now he's even more unruly.
Exactly.
Even more.
Yes. He never tries to change his ways. So at the end of the movie, he's just back where he started. If anything, it would have been worse if he tried to lighten up, because then maybe he would have got his ass kicked by Colin Cho at the end.
On that note, I think Colin Cho playing a straight up villain like this kind of worked for me.
Have you not seen him
I don't know if you
in
agree.
other stuff? He's been the villain in a few Jet Li movies, I recall.
Yeah, but never the main villain, right? Here he's kind of, I wouldn't even call it hamming it up. He kind of plays the role pretty well. I've never actually seen him have as much screen time as he does in this film. Not that he has a ton anyways.
Yeah, I don't recall him having too much screen time either. I've always been a fan of Colin Cho. I always wanted him to do more. This is perfect. I wanted him maybe to act a little more, just maybe be more of a conniving asshole. So
that's what we get.
So his downfall feels triumphant for us, because in the end he gets his ass beat, of course, but I don't really feel he was doing anything so dastardly where I was like, yeah, Donnie beat him, great, hooray, he got his comeuppance.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe he's. I wanted more from Colin Cho in his career too. I wanted to see him more post this, after this movie was released. But I guess he was just riding off the high of the Matrix movies. So he's like, yeah, I'm good. I got enough money in the bank right now.
And then he probably just got so beat up from this movie that he's like, yeah, I think I'm good with martial arts films for a while.
A little more backstory. I mean, I'm not even backstory. More context. This movie came out in 2007, 1 year before Ip Man. So Donnie Yen, he did make a name for himself already at this point, for several years, but he didn't make it to the world stage until 1 year after this release. So it's kind of amazing, because as much as I like the Ip Man, I hate to compare apples to oranges, right? But everyone loves the fighting in Ip Man. It's oh, it's cool, but I come back to this movie, I'm like, man, I kind of wanted Donnie to do more of this, because I realized he doesn't do a lot of this in his movies. Special ID's a movie where he showed off some jujitsu, some MMA, mixing his martial arts, but for the most part, this is kind of the highlight of his MMA, on-screen MMA fighting or choreography. It's kind of a shame, because it's his first and best, as far as I've seen so far.
Mm-hmm. I like what he did with Special ID. It's hard to compare that in this movie. A lot of people forget that film as well.
I forget me. You're talking about me. I always forget.
We watched that
movie.
together, and then after you watched it, you're like, "What happened?"
Every time.
But I always liked the fight at the end of that movie as well. Mm-hmm. This one is just so much more memorable, though. Something about it, the direction and the location and the fight choreography, it just all comes together. Yep. And then I think he still does some MMA stuff in, what's the last movie he did that we covered? Raging Fire. Yeah. There's some of that there too.
Right. Yeah, but he that was what came out like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, he's much older, and also like his main opponent is Nicholas Say, who isn't a trained martial artist at all, so he doesn't really need to go all out. Like here, he's going against Colin Cho, and it is a legendary fight that's like all plastered over YouTube. So like
most definitely.
it's a very very unique fight for a reason. Yeah, and I think I need. Well, we talked about Ip Man. We talked about SBL TOO 2. So yeah, this is directed by Wilson Yip. Generally speaking, I like most of the stuff that comes from Wilson Yip. Donnie and him paired up. I think this is the third film they filmed together, right? I think before this they worked on Dragon Tiger Gate. We should cover that one day because that movie is fucking awful.
Is it on Hi-YAH?
Pretty bad.
Because if it's not, then we can't cover it.
I think it is.
I think it is. Sweet, nice. Okay, there you go.
If anyone's listening and you want to request it, we'll totally cover it. But yeah, I'm glad we're finally talking about this film. Because like I don't know, I generally like Wilson Yip's films. Because he does have an eye for action, like action directing for action. But like he knows how to at least sell the drama, even if you don't like the story. I think he's pretty good at like staging all scenes or like pacing the movie out to be like as dramatic as possible. It always feels like his films are dramas first and then action movies like a close second.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll agree with you there in the Ip Man films. I think he does the dramas stuff there very well. For this one, wasn't really doing it for me. But with SPL, I thought the drama there was good. So for this one, this is just kind of a miss.
Then we need to watch Dragon Tiger Gate because that is just oh boy.
You hear that? If you want to hear us cover it, let us know. Poke us online.
Yep. I guess with that said, I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about? Like before we
didn't even
jump into
we didn't even talk about the action.
Oh, we didn't?
No.
I kind of did.
Not at all.
All right, from a general standpoint.
Yeah, from a general standpoint, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of poked around a little bit and mentioned it briefly, but okay, let's talk about the quantity. There really isn't a lot.
There is not. Yes. Going back and rewatching this, I realized like, there's not a lot of fighting in here.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, but that makes sense because that last fight is, what is that, like almost like 7 minutes long? 7 minutes of just Colin Cho getting punched in the face with Donnie Yen's fucking huge right hooks.
Yeah. Apparently, there was supposed to be a fight scene at the driving range, according to IMDb.
There is a fight scene at the driving range, but it's very, very, very short.
No, sorry, longer. Sorry,
longer.
That's what I meant to say. Much longer fight scene, and it is very short. And maybe would that have fixed the fight pacing of the movie? I don't really know. Because we get sprinklings of fights throughout the movie. We actually get one fight between Donnie Yen and Xing Yu, but that's closer to the end, and that's the closest we get to a long fight scene.
Yeah. I wish that fight went a little longer too, because it starts out in an elevator and it's just kind of it's a jumbled mess. That's okay, but then it turns into like a mini parkour chase through the city. And then when they're fighting in the restaurant or the outdoor restaurant, it's like, oh, that's great. I love the stuff that's going on there. And then it's over. I'm like, oh, man, like it needed to be longer. This movie needed a little more action in, sprinkled throughout the story because you're kind of just sitting with it and there's not that much.
Yeah. But prior to that, is there really that much? No, just a lot of story unpacking, like throughout the film.
But Louis Koo gets put in an armbar in the opening segment, and then he's fighting like some guy in a boxing ring really quick. But it's like, oh, was that just training footage? Like why did they even put that in there?
Yeah. These are all things we can. Well, we're not barely gonna have to mention them in the Patreon section, but it really just boils down to like the later fights. And we'll obviously talk about the story more in the action and story breakdown. But that final fight, it's fucking good. There are so this is just me. I mean, and this is not a a flex in any ways, but like I've been doing some jujitsu for quite some time now. It's a small stint, and like I noticed certain things, but like it doesn't ruin my enjoyment of the final fight at all. It's actually, I find that the application of the MMA on screen works perfectly fine for me.
Right.
Like I see some little hiccups. I'm like, oh yeah, like that application is not applied 100%, like the way that you would do in an actual competition, or if you're rolling with somebody. But like I don't really care. the action direction is so solid. Like I could just throw all that out the window.
Yeah, and additionally too, do you want your if you're going to do the move realistically, that might ruin how it may appear cinematically. So maybe they have to do, they got to cut corners. They're doing things for the camera. They're not doing things because like, oh, I really want to choke him out in this moment. It's like, no. We want to see it. It needs to look cool. It needs to look interesting.
Right. My favorite comment is from every a combat martial artist who does reaction videos for movies. Like, that's not how you do a rear naked choke. You do it like this in real life. I'm like, dude, these are actors. You don't want to teach people in the audience how to do a real rear naked choke. Like that's not cool, man. That's a very deadly application. So yeah, like it's fine. Like I think for what they did, like in the final product of this film, like it doesn't have to be 100% realistic, but the movements are there. The positions are there. You just need a little tweaking, but yeah, you could throw all that out the window. You can still just appreciate, like the fact that they went the extra mile and like really showcase like MMA and made it look dynamic and look really well on screen, which is a problem we had back in May when we did MMA, because that was a fucking. It's like all these fights are terrible.
No, they weren't. They were awesome. I loved them all. Yeah. Wait, did we do MMA this year? I didn't think.
No, we did MMA last year.
Okay.
Last
year.
That's why we're moving away from themes.
Right. Girl, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, man. Girls' blood. Best MMA / softcore porn. Yeah. So.
Okay, but yeah. I guess we can jump into it. I wonder if this will be a short one because it's shorter, maybe shorter. It's never a short one. I wonder if it was shorter one, because it's so backloaded with action. But yeah, if you guys are interested in hearing our thoughts on the movie in further detail with spoilers, because we will cover the story beats and air our grievances with the story in greater detail, but also to break down the few fight scenes and the big fight scene at the very end, then yeah, you can follow us on Patreon. We can find the entire breakdown that we do of the film. And
then also on Patreon we have bonus episodes that if you don't subscribe, you don't get to hear us talk about. What did we talk about last? 47 Ronin with Keanu Reeves. We talked about Blind War that came out recently, and the Roundup, and then amongst other films. So if you want extra content from us, you got to subscribe. Only $1 a month, I think. I don't know. What's this?
Three.
Oh,
three for that. Oh. Three for that tier. But
boy.
Hey, like you get all the content too, including the exclusive. So all this extra content you get, including another Louis Koo movie that we covered, Warriors of Future. I'm like, God, that title always throws me off. Where's the future that
that's coming out soon too.
Yeah. But okay, I guess with that said, let's talk about Flashpoint. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. We're at the point where we give our recommendations, but there's a whole wealth of audio you would be listening to here if you follow us on Patreon. There you can listen to the entire episode, including an exclusive action breakdown of the fights in the movie. And now on to our final thoughts. That is Flashpoint.
That's Flashpoint. Hey, we made it through. That was a long one because that was
a fucking long one. Yeah.
No, it's weird. There wasn't a lot of action, but we could definitely go on about that last fight. Fucking beautiful fight. Yeah,
great fight scene. I have to stop saying this might be a shorter episode because every time I do, it never does. Oh my god, this is a no-brainer. When terms of the final fight scene, fucking check that out. Like, go watch it on YouTube. It's available there. The whole movie's on yeahhhh. I think it's not the optimal way of watching the movie. If you can get your hands on the original Chinese or the original movie in general.
It is the original Chinese, I thought.
No, well, watching on Hayya, they have it's dubbed for so
it wasn't dubbed.
Oh God, have I just been watching it on the wrong version?
You watched? Oh man, I
watched this in English.
You watched the English version? No, I watched.
And then I have to go back and watch it a second time for this viewing in Chinese. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah, it's in Chinese and Hayya. That's how I watched it.
Oh jeez. All right, then maybe whatever.
So that's your fault.
It's available on Hayya. It's my fault.
Up. Well,
I fucked up.
If you don't want to read subtitles and you like martial arts movies, I don't know what the hell you're doing. But that option is there for you on Hayya, I guess.
Well, yes, if you'd like to, yeah. But okay, fine. Regardless, it's not like the story's the greatest.
It is not.
Like you're in it. You're in it to watch the final fight scene, and the rest of the action in the movie's okay. I don't mind the story as much as you do, though, right? So so I did enjoy watching it again. I haven't seen this movie in quite some time. I think the movie has some. It's kind of predictable in certain areas, but the movie knows how to keep the tension going, even though the characters aren't the strongest. So by the time you get to the end, it doesn't feel like, or at least for me, it doesn't feel like I've just been looking at the time and being like, okay, when are we getting to the final fight? When are we getting to the final fight? When we get there, it's like, okay, I feel like my patience has been well rewarded. This fucking final fight is great. But if you're impatient, if you're in any ways don't agree with me, yeah, you can totally just skip to the final fight and just watch that. All right, I rambled on long enough. Zero, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the final fight is great. It's in martial arts movies, Hall of Fame. It's definitely up there. I mentioned earlier in this discussion that I'm not a fan of the story of this film, and I remember now why I never went back and rewatched the movie anyway. Is because the movie itself is very forgettable for me. And I'll say it again. This fight is so good. I really wish it was in a better movie. But here it is. It is what it is. It definitely holds up. It is interesting that Donnie Yen studied MMA for a few years and was able to just pull something out of nowhere. Like where did this come from, right? Because we never got MMA implemented in a movie like this anyway. Sure, there were MMA movies, people showing actual mixed martial arts like in the octagon, in the ring. But to implement it already into the high bar that Hong Kong has raised with their action was just everybody was kind of talking about this fight, and people still talk about this fight because it's I don't know, like I don't think in terms of an MMA style fight, like have we gotten anything similar to this that Donnie Yen has not been involved with.
Oh no! Just flat out, just say no. We covered that other Hong Kong movie for MMA a while ago. I forgot the title of it already, but even that it's not to this caliber. I mean, that is technically that one was technically a straight up MMA movie that took place in a ring.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that it's it's not the same.
Yeah, there's
this movie.
No, go ahead.
What's up? You gonna say? No, okay. My thoughts was, this is a movie first and foremost. Like it's a crime / cop procedural movie, first, and it has MMA elements in it, but they make the MMA work. But I don't think there's really any other movie, unfortunately, that's come out of Hong Kong that really rivals this. I'm sure there are other ones that came out, but none of them are to this level, and none that really showcase grappling to this degree. Mixing it up. Sometimes a movie will have grappling, but this movie is somehow able to showcase it in a way that makes it seem like this is the closest we've gotten to like an actual MMA fight, and keeping things interesting. So it's been like 13 years since, or 15 years since this movie came out, and we still haven't beaten this high bar you said.
Yeah, I think the John Wick movies are getting there, but they're doing something else entirely. But they are incorporating MMA and grappling in different ways. Something similar. Like I think those movies do what they're doing great, but like in terms of a martial arts fight that involves MMA, literally a mix of martial arts, in addition to action, like environmental damage and whatnot. Like this movie is still the gold standard, and I think we haven't gotten anything. Well, I don't know if we haven't gotten anything. Like this is still like up there in terms of like really, really, really top-notch fights.
And I'm assuming that's where all the budget went for this movie, because they did supposedly go over budget, and it's like the rest of the film's like, oh, I wish there was more fighting in the movie, but then I'm assuming that they just put all their eggs in this one basket and like, all right, we just gotta make this final fight work.
Well, you know what?
There you go.
You know what we needed? We needed more product placement with Johnny Walker and Heineken bottles all over the place. Like they should have just been like wearing like Johnny Walker T-shirts and baseball caps, and like constantly drinking Heineken in every single scene to inflate this budget, so we could have gotten like a 30-minute action scene at the end.